Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on the new SPHE curriculum for junior cycle this evening. Tonight, myself, Jana London, founder of the Natural Women's Council, along with Linda Kennedy and Natasha Kavanagh, will be providing you with the facts of the new curriculum and, most importantly, your legal statutory rights as mothers and fathers of your children. What has led us here today? We started campaigning against what's coming into schools back in January. We hosted an event outside Leinster House on the 26th of January, whereby we walked through the curriculum. We talked about the changes and the opt-out letters that we developed. Our groups, the Natural Women's Council, work in partnership with Lawyers for Justice Ireland, which is a group of 4 lawyers who work on a pro bono basis to help us with all of our things from a legal perspective, including many of our letter templates. We work with Parents' Rights Alliance and Irish Education Alliance, which is a group of nearly 400 teachers and principals across Ireland who are also standing up to safeguard children in schools. And so we started the campaign in January. It's gotten amazing traction, so much support around the country. At the same time we launched the SPHE curriculum campaign, we also launched the campaign to move the sexually explicit and indoctrinating books from the children's section to the adult section. We've also gotten over 200,000 leaflets out across the country, posted to every county in Ireland, where really dedicated mothers, fathers, grandparents, aunties, uncles, neighbors have passed these out in their community, at school gates, wherever there are parents, shopping centers, information stalls, and more. So that's really the power of a grassroots campaign. It's really people driven. It's not funded by the government. It's funded by donations from people across the country. And that's really the power of a grassroots campaign. Is we don't claim to be the experts. We don't claim to be the leaders of any movement. We simply want to provide everyone with the tools and inspire people to take the on-the-ground direct action and bring the information to people's doorsteps on their own. So that's what led us here today. Despite enormous public pushback from parents across the country, Norma Foley, the Department of Education and the NCCA, however, did not listen to parents or teachers, and they went ahead and put this into the curriculum, which started this September for junior cycle. So I'm going to turn it over to Linda Kennedy, who is co-founder of the Irish Education Alliance, co-founder of Teen Herd, a member of the Natural Women's Council, a mother to 2 teenagers, and someone I'm delighted to call my friend. She does Trojan work and has done the last several years advocating for the rights and protection of children. So Linda's going to walk us through the changes of the SPHE curriculum, and we'll share some screens with you this evening as well with the information, as well as some links that we'll post on the video to provide you with the tools afterwards for you to reference and share with everyone you know. So over to Linda.
Hello, thank you, Jana, and welcome everybody. Firstly, I'd like to advise you all to do your own research as well as listening to this information session. The NCCA do not make it easy to find the information on their website, but I just want to explain to you how you can find the information just to make it a little bit easier for you. So first of all, you search the NCCA Junior Cycle SPHE curriculum, and you scroll down to the updated 2023 specification, and you click on this. Then you scroll down to view the 2023 specification, and you can download this. And this is where you have the information of all the strands and the learning outcomes and the glossary of terms. So click on this and you will see SPHE 2023. And you will find here the resources for teaching and learning in SPHE. You click here and you scroll down to the strands. And here it has all the strands and the resources. And if you can share, please, strand 1. And you will see the first learning outcome that we're going to look at this evening.
Bear with me.
Right, strand 1 is learning outcome 1.4. Again, I would like to say that it is difficult to find these on the website, but just persevere. And if you have any questions, or if you can't find this information, you can contact us and we can run you through it. So the first strand that we're going to look at is 1.4, and it is to recognize the factors and influences that shape a young person's self-identity, such as family, peers, culture, gender identity, sexual orientation, race, ethnic background, disabilities, religious beliefs, and world views. Gender identity is defined by the NCCA as a person's felt internal and individual experience of gender, which may or may not correspond with the sex registered at birth. This is a belief system, an ideology, and is categorically false. You can read the glossary of terms in this document for further definitions. To teach gender identity ideology, the NCCA has made available to teachers an information leaflet to help teachers deliver and affirm these learning outcomes. This means that a teacher can tell a young person who may feel uncomfortable in their gender that they can choose to identify as another gender. Teachers are not qualified to do this. Gender dysphoria is a mental condition that needs specialized help. This curriculum sets out to normalize this condition. It is a social contagion. The upsurge in young people wanting to take puberty blockers is frightening, and there is no mention of the huge regret these people have, as it can't be reversed and can cause infertility. But the SPHE curriculum seeks to celebrate transgenderism with no mention of the huge adverse effects. I would advise you to study a resource from the HSE called Relationship and Sexual Education 1, and we provide all the links to this. And you can find this also on the NCCA website. This is where This Book is Gay was, and it has very many indoctrinating links here. One is from Belong To, and it is all about the use of pronouns. And we've seen recently with the school and the whole controversy around the use of pronouns. So we'd like to show you this video. And it's coming up now.
It's coming up now.
And Linda, if I can just add, while Natasha's bringing up the video, with the consultation, many parents have come to us very surprised that they weren't aware of the consultation that was done. And just to let all of our listeners know, this was not a proper consultation. It was a cloak consultation whereby it was buried in the NCCA website. It wasn't pushed out to mothers and fathers through any school communication, such as all the other surveys we have to do, like the disability services, the digital literacy, and many more. Most things are communicated through Aladdin, so we can have a chance to give feedback. This one, by design, was kept from parents. That's important to know. We weren't really invited to the consultation, but we can be sure that some of the activist groups like Tenny and Belong To, they certainly knew about it, and they lobbied to have lots of surveys done from their activist groups funded by the taxpayer.
Exactly, Jana. And just with regards to the use of pronouns, if children don't get these pronouns right, they could be accused of being transphobic. And this could, go against their belief systems, go against their conscience to follow this ideology. But they will be under pressure to use these pronouns, just like we've seen in the news recently. And if we can get that video up there, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Names are important to transgender people because it shows that you respect them.
And it makes a big difference to hear something that reflects how you feel about yourself.
Pronouns are important to transgender people to show respect and acceptance.
I use they, them pronouns, and this is one of the few ways that I'm recognised as non-binary in society.
If someone has known you as who you once were, then it can be kind of hard for them to understand who you are now.
I think it's really important to get on board with the name change and the pronoun. As a teacher, if you can make them feel happy and create a comfortable environment where they feel like they belong and that they're appreciated, that's a win-win situation, really.
If you don't know what pronouns to use for somebody and you're not in a position to ask, using they or them would be safe because it's neutral.
If you knew a transgender person prior to their transition, Be sure to use their correct name and pronouns now and not their old birth name or their old pronouns.
It's okay to make mistakes when you're using new pronouns for somebody, because as long as you're trying, the sentiment is there.
Make a special effort around the names and pronouns. I know for some parents it can be difficult then to use a different name. All you can do is do your best.
Just be open, be willing to accept change.
Yeah, so you can see there that video will be shown in for first years, and there are a lot more videos on that document called Relationship and Sexuality Education 1 that I would advise all parents to look through and watch those videos thoroughly. And if you feel that those videos are not appropriate for your children to watch, then you need to go and speak to the school, and we'll speak about those opt-out letters later. So another link I'd like you to go to, I'd like to watch or to read the gender ideology statement that is on the Irish Education Alliance website. We emailed this to every school. I think it was before school finished there in May, and it has many links there as well. So again, I would advise parents to do your own research. It will tell you on the NCCA website, like Jana said, that thorough consultations were carried out and that parents and groups were listened to. And we know for a fact that this didn't happen. And you will see in the next video an advisor called Dr. Ellie Barnes from Educate and Celebrate in the UK. And she came to a conference in 2020 in Wexford, an ITO conference, and she spoke to teachers there. And you can show this video now and just see this lady speaking.
Apologies.
So we've had to have parent consultations, and the only advice I can give you around that is don't send a letter home to say you're about to embark on this work. That's the worst thing you can do. Don't hold a parents' meeting. You don't want 30 parents shouting at you. Who wants that in your life? That's the thing to do. But what you can do is you can survey parents. You can ask them where they feel they need help. You're not asking them if they like it or not. That's not the issue. It's in policy. We have to do this work. But you can say, on which of these equality strands do you need help? Do you need help talking to your child about racism? Do you need help talking to your child about disabilities? Do you need help talking about sexual orientation, gender? And just see what comes back. And so you're doing it in a more supportive manner. So I would suggest that as a way, if you wanted to do more proactive work with parents, to get them involved within that process.
Okay, so you can hear there that Dr. Ellie Barnes said that whether parents like it or not, that this ideology is going to be taught to our children. So they had no intentions of consulting with parents, which is why this consultation was hidden on the website and so difficult to find. The same as it's so difficult to find.
Sorry, another quote as well, whether we like it or not, it's in policy, we have to do this work. Well, that's not how the legislation is written at all, which we'll get to later. But it's just yeah,
it's really appalling. You listen to that, it's appalling.
I'd like to just jump in on the pronoun really quickly. When we were on the Niall Boylan show today, myself and Lisa from the Natural Women's Council, and also Leisha from CEO and founder of The Countess was on, and Leisha made a really good point about pronouns. And it was, they can seem, someone had commented, well, they're just changing, it's just pronouns, it's just what people are asking to be called or whatnot. And the really good point that she made was, pronouns are the first step to a social transition. So by affirming to a child that boy now wants to be a he, you are affirming to that child that they are in the wrong body and that girl should be a boy. And that is so detrimental. So although on the surface it can seem quite innocent calling them he, she, they, them, or whatever they choose that day. I think there's even some schools where kids are identifying as, is it Furbies or furries or something? Whatever it is they want to identify as. If you accept that, you are affirming that they are born in the wrong body, which is detrimental to a child's certainty and well-being.
Yeah, and I heard Lisa today saying about, it's like, would you affirm a child who was, you know, said that, you know, came home from school and said that they were fat? Would you affirm that and send them down the road, you know, to be anorexic? You know, it's a
diet pills or whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, in addition as well, like if you think of an 8-year-old or whatever age, we're hearing all different ages are already being socially transitioned in schools around the country. And when you think about it as well, from that child's perspective, maybe they're going through a fad, the social contagion, for whatever reason. It may not be gender dysmorphia. It may be for attention, or it may be for various other reasons, all of which, you know, should be addressed. But when their parents, their school, everyone around them has adopted this new name and these new pronouns, they may feel gridlocked, like, I can't do this now. I'm sort of on this hamster wheel now and I can't undo this. And you can just imagine the implosion that could ensue from a child feeling like they have no way out when they come to change, if indeed they come to change their mind. When so many kids, it's not gender dysphoria, it is a fad that we're dealing with, a social contagion fad. So it's not even a deeply rooted psychological issue. You know, especially the younger they are, just be horrendous to have everyone around you suddenly, you know, gung-ho.
And now Boylan actually said today he compared it to a child who might break their arm and, you know, gets loads of attention, you know, from, so this is kind of could be another way of them getting attention and not dealing with the real issue maybe that they're suffering with. Yeah, it's so really most parents, I would say 99.9% of parents and teachers don't want this in schools, with the debate of parents and teachers' feelings. And we would advise parents of both primary and secondary to send in the opt-out letter to their child's school, which we'll run through later. This ideology is infiltrating everywhere and in all areas of the curriculum, and there's no escaping it. We're going to show, the next video we're going to show is on the INTO teachers website. It can be accessed by parents, and it's the INTO's teaching tool for primary school teachers on facilitating a social transition in the classroom. And this is really shocking.
Slight delay. Yeah, there we go.
At a parent-teacher meeting, a mother told me that her child, who we called Lucy, identified as a boy and wished to be called Liam. After this, I set about preparing the class for Liam's social transition. I taught lessons investigating and challenging gender stereotypes, and using the book Introducing Teddy, explained that some people don't identify with the gender they're assigned at birth. I said, Tilly wasn't happy because everyone saw her as a boy, but she knew she was really a girl. My pupil Ray asked, so boys can change into girls? And then Julie chimed in, and girls can change into boys? Yes, I said. Sometimes, while the doctor says a baby is a boy, as that baby grows up, they feel inside that they're not a boy. While they might have a boy's name, like Tilly, they know they aren't a boy and want to change their name. The same can happen for a girl. By making those changes, the person feels happier and more like themselves. Some people who experience this might use the word transgender to describe themselves. Once the pupils understood the concept, and once Liam and his mum were happy, I helped him tell the class, everyone, do you remember last week we read about Tilly? Everyone replied, yes. Well, we're very lucky to know a person like that, and they're even in our class. The person we've been calling Lucy is really a boy, and is now ready to tell us all. Liam told the class, I've always felt like a boy. My new name is Liam. So when I call the ruller, I'll be calling out Liam McCarthy, and we will all call him Liam, won't we? The whole class agreed. Yes, teacher. Then Paul asked, teacher, is Liam still sitting at our table? I laughed and replied, yes, nothing has changed except Liam's name. And nothing did change, except that Liam seemed much happier in school. A few weeks later, I introduced the pupils to non-binary identity, where people don't identify with being either a boy or a girl. The most important element of any lesson on gender identity is that we put the emphasis on respecting everyone, regardless of gender identity or expression.
I mean, I've watched that a number of times, and each time I watch it, I just find it utterly shocking. Those children, number one, look about 5 or 6, and they're saying that a boy can become a girl and a girl can become a boy like it's a fact. And this is child abuse. There's no other words for it but child abuse. And it makes me really sad as a teacher to see that, and to even imagine that teachers might, teach that to a class.
It's also clearly biased. The only possible outcome is that he's just so much happier. That's it then, problem solved, no other issues. And plus as well, the blatant gaslighting of the kids. Now we're going to call such a body, such a body.
No choice. You will do this. Yeah.
This good, this bad.
Total and utter indoctrination. It's appalling. So
I've talked about it a couple of times. I'll just jump in. I've talked about that.
Show up there. Yeah, sorry, Jana.
Oh, sorry. A couple of things I'll just point out is, a child in their life is only certain really about a very few amount of things. One, they're certain if they're a boy and a girl, they know who their mommy and daddy is, and they know if they have a sibling. That's pretty much all a child is certain about in their own lives. And if you take away the certainty of, am I a boy or a girl, what will that do long term to that child's mental stability and well-being if that is pulled out from under their feet? Am I a boy or a girl? And we can only imagine the mental health crisis that we'll see, even worse than it is now in this country if this goes ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, whatever about the child socially transitioning, I mean, all those children in that class are going to be seriously affected by that indoctrination. It's and the school. I've had experience of it in a school where 3 children are transitioning, and where there are gender neutral toilets in a primary school. So that's strand, the learning outcome 1. Okay, so we're going to look at another one, and it's on strand 3. There's 2 learning outcomes here actually. So we can show up strand 3 there. And we're going to look at 3.6. And 3.6 there states, to appreciate the breadth of what constitutes human sexuality and how sexual orientation and gender identity are experienced and expressed in diverse ways. Just to say that Norma Foley announced that the term spectrum will be removed, but in diverse ways is really not any different. This book is gay, which I've actually renamed as This Book is Porn, because it is porn. I'm sure you've all seen the pages from it, because this has been kind of like the poster book, but there's lots of other books, as Jana was talking earlier about the books in the libraries that are inappropriate for children. This book was removed from the resources, as I've already said, but I ask you, why was it there in the first place? This book is extremely sexually explicit and recommends a dating app called Grindr, which is for over 18s. And this was actually at one stage, it was on the primary curriculum. It was on the Rainbow Reads list on the primary curriculum. Then it was on that resource which I mentioned earlier, Relationships and Sexuality Education 1, which I'd advise you all to really look at that thoroughly, because they're going to be using that a lot. And it was removed from here. But why was it there in the first place? It makes me so angry. Let's just take a look at one of the books there, Natasha, the workbook there by EDCO. And Norma Foley might have removed some words from the curriculum, but the publishers, for example, EDCO, you've got Educate, IE, you've got Folens, they haven't removed these words. They still use the words like cisgender, spectrum. And we're going to look there at a book called Health and Wellbeing, SPHE 1. And this is a book that a lot of the students are going to be using. If your child does have the book, I would say ask the child to bring the book home and tear these pages out of the book. There might be some other useful information in there that your children will benefit from, but tear these pages out. So you would see that on one of the pages is the genderbread man. and it's taken from the Gingerbread Man. And you'll see some definitions there, like gender identity is about how you see and feel about yourself as male, female, both or neither, irrespective of the sex you were assigned at birth, irrespective. And you look there at the picture of the Gingerbread Man.
Genderbread person, Linda. They've actually hijacked our
gingerbread. Oh, our gingerbread person. I'm getting mixed up with the Gingerbread Man.
I still call him the Gingerbread Man.
Hijacked it, you know, this you know, fictional gingerbread man, but this is still fiction. Still fiction. And then there's another page there where it shows a very confused person. I call this picture of the child a person because we don't know if this is a boy or a girl, and that's deliberate. And at the top there we see a definition: cisgender. My gender identity is the same as the sex I was assigned at birth. It's like the whole of mankind as being just, you know, it's just about being cisgender, and it's just one definition, you know. I mean, it's absolutely crazy that children are being taught this, and cisgender was supposed to be removed from the curriculum, yet it's here in this workbook. And you can look there at the other definitions. I would advise you to look thoroughly at your children's books, tear these pages out. We'll also have these pages attached to this recording so that you'll be able to study them.
Linda, if I can jump in, it's quite interesting. They say the wording even is the sex you were assigned at birth, whereas a child's sex isn't actually just assigned at birth. A child's sex is developed in the womb from conception. So this is only leading up to the fact that, you know, people like, you know, the politician Paul Murphy decided not to assign that sex, and his baby is a baby or something. So sex is not assigned at birth at all.
Is it Juniper? I think, yeah. This baby is called.
So that's false information. Sex assigned at birth. Sex is from conception, not assigned at birth, and that implies that parents can just have a baby and say, actually, you know, the baby has a penis, but actually I wanted a girl, so I'm going to assign it as a girl. So no, that verbiage is even indoctrinating children in that book.
Aside from teaching the children the neo language, they're getting quizzed on it as if there are right and wrong answers, you know. And what happens if a child says, well, you know, disagrees, and, you know, the right answer is, oh no, that's this gender and that's what this is and that's what that is, and a child says, you know, no, I don't agree with that language, I don't agree that means that.
They're not allowed to disagree.
Will they be
allowed to disagree?
Will they be given extra homework? Are they in trouble? Will they get 0 on the exam?
Yeah. It's like it's just a detail that you were born a boy or a girl is just a little minor detail that you can just change at a whim. I mean, that video there that we watched shows that. It's utterly deplorable.
Just to highlight as well, it's so normal, such a normal part of development for an prepubescent or adolescent child to not like their bodies, to have issue with themselves, to have issue with their identity, to feel insecure about their personality or their abilities, intellectually, sports abilities, you know, and feel clumsy and feel all these things as your hips are widening and your shoulders are widening, your voice is doing something funny, and all these. It couldn't be more normal. And it's happening just to an age group whose brains are still very much in development. So they're trying to grapple with a whole lot of things, you know, even, you know, these teenagers being cranky and hormonal, you have to give them, you know, have patience with them and give them credit. But then on top of that, they're being lumped of, well, this could be the answer. And if the messaging across this curriculum is all positive and all pro and really, really, you know, giving a thumbs up, like this is all just wholesome, God help these children. God help these children.
And we know that like autistic children are extremely vulnerable, and I mean, why are they bringing this curriculum in for 12-year-olds at the age that they're most impressionable, you know? And autistic children are already maybe feeling uncomfortable in themselves, and they may see this as a way out, and that's why we have this statistic of 90% of those children who transition. I don't even like using the word transition because you cannot transition from one sex to another, but it is affecting autistic children hugely, and that is a massive worry here. Okay, will we go on to the next book there, Natasha, to show, if you could show up another book called You've Got This, and it's by educate.ie, I think.
While you're bringing that up, I think we should find another word than transition, because transition is like you transition to secondary school or your transition year. It sounds very seamless. It should really be called sort of like mutilate and sterilize, really.
It's yeah. They're just wanting to normalize it, really, you know. And there's a page there, and it's got some celebrities who are transitioning on it, where they're wanting children to do research on these celebrities and present their research to the class. And yeah, that's the page there. And we see the two celebrities there. That's the children are to study and bring the presentations. You've got 30 children in a class, and each child is going to give a presentation to the class of this particular celebrity who is transitioning. And I just
if I may interject,
sorry, go ahead.
It says quite clearly, research a famous transgender person, blah, 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 blah. That's one of the activities. Research, so they're literally sending children online to research transgenderism and to perhaps go into the social media pages.
Yeah.
There's two examples here of whatever celebrity. Often these social media pages are not for children.
No.
You know, these are often over 18s platforms.
Exactly.
And of course, the messaging on these people's pages is all very pro the agenda. You know, it's all very, it's really glorifying and you know, creating idols out of these people, because of course on their Instagram they look so very happy with their double mastectomy and all the rest, and we're not even seeing, of course it's not real, it's social media. And this book is actually sending children on to research this online and to view what countless TikTok videos, God knows what, of just pure grooming is all it can be called.
I see there a quote by Katie above, and it says, "No one gets me, like I'm trapped in this stupid body with stupid breasts. It's not the real me." I mean, trapped in this stupid body with stupid breasts. It's almost like encouraging you know, a contagion that's happening where girls are strapping their breasts and then are having them removed and have massive regret.
It's normalizing it, right? It's normalizing gender dysphoria. It's saying that's fine. If you feel like this, that's fine.
Yeah.
Other people also feel like this.
I mean,
here's a process.
You know,
when actually they should be taught
say,
to love themselves and find a way to love themselves.
One of our followers recently messaged me on a group and said that one of her friends' children in class they were doing a math problem, a math equation. And one of the parts of the math equation was calculating the price of a chest binder. So this transgenderism and pushing this onto innocent children is not just in the RSC and SPHE. Hey?
Can you repeat that, Johnny? You're frozen.
Oh, did I freeze? Am I back now? Can you hear me? Yeah.
Just in case he froze.
Oh yeah.
The whole video.
Sorry, I have probably bad.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. One of our followers said that one of her friend's daughters was in a math class, and they were talking about calculating the price of a chest binder. So it wasn't just in RSE and SPHE, it was in the math class, calculating the price of a chest binder, which is what young girls use when they want to.
It's also in the Irish book. You saw the two boys, the two fathers of the child in the Irish book. You've got literature and English. You know, it's going to be infiltrated into all areas of the curriculum. So it's not just, I mean, opting your child out. Of course, we want to opt our children out of this, but you know, there's so much more to this than just opting out. You know, because it's right across the curriculum. Okay, so the third learning outcome we're going to look at is 3.10. This is a really important one. You could share strand 3 again on the screen, Natasha. This will discuss the influence of popular culture and the online world in particular, the influence of pornography on young people's understanding, expectations, and social norms in relation to sexual expression. I mean, why does a 11, 12-year-old plus need to learn anything about pornography? And people will use that argument, oh, they see it on their phones. That's a whole different argument. So I'm really concerned about how this topic in the classroom can be approached that is in keeping with the Christian ethos and is mindful of the age appropriateness of the children. It is utterly unnecessary and wrong to discuss porn with children, as it totally depends on the teacher's handling of the topic and what information is shared in the class. And I will say that again, the teacher's handling of the topic and the information that is shared, you know, from the teachers
Linda,
to the
on that
students and the
point,
students to each other.
On that point, what has been in the paper this week, of course, is in an Educate Together school, a classroom of 8-year-olds, which is what, second class, is it?
Yeah, second class, yeah.
Their teacher is requiring them to use the they them pronouns. So just as you're saying there, just on that exact point, one teacher, you know, it could be given a whole different class than another teacher. You know, in my day, you didn't even know if the teacher was married, what kids they had, whatever. Now you know their sexuality, you know, their whole private life, you know, their pronouns, you know, all of this level of stuff. Not only that, but you're learning about what that means in a real adult term and a real adult environment that children just are not equipped to understand, to comprehend, and certainly not to apply to their own child life, you know?
I mean, it's a huge issue, you know, and they talk about ethical porn, and this is not the approach to take. There's guidance material that is given by the NCCA to help teachers deliver this learning outcome, which is not appropriate instruction and is not in line with the moral and spiritual development of the child. The NCCA wants teachers to begin by helping students to reflect, this is quote, by the way, begin by helping students to reflect on their own values and expectations of sexual relationships and what they consider to be the features of a healthy adult sexual experience. So they want children to discuss what they consider to be the features of a healthy adult sexual experience. And my question is here, why is the NCCA asking 12 to 15-year-olds to reflect on adult sexual experiences when the legal age for sexual intercourse is 17 years? For the NCCA to promote sexual expectations among 12 to 15-year-olds is very disturbing, as this might put pressure on children to have sexual experiences. And what resources will they be using to provide this learning outcome? And again, I would ask you to look at that document I've mentioned a few times to see the resources there. And there are a lot of other resources that only teachers can access on the website. I mean, this is so, so serious. We're handing our children over in trust, and we have no idea that the information that they're going to get. And, you know, we know what teenagers are like. They don't necessarily come home and tell their parents everything that they've done in school. It's not like primary school, do you know? And they're also very nervous that their parent might go to the school and complain. So they're very reluctant to speak about anything that the parent might get upset about. Yeah,
and plus the very concept of the very concept of ethical porn, and to suggest, you know, and as we know in some of the books that are in the libraries in the kids section, they refer to porn as a sugary treat to help you to explore your kinks and fantasies. In a child's book, yes. Ethical porn, you know, we should be putting forward programs that teach children the damage, the detrimental effects that certain imagery and content can have on their developing psyche, and also to teach them that porn is a supply and demand industry. It's all on clicks. Supply and demand industry. The more popular a video, the more ad revenue, sales, etc., etc. Supply and demand industry, and that every single person that they could ever see in porn is either trafficked or broken. Those are the only two categories.
Mm-hmm.
Every single last person is either trafficked or broken. And we should be letting them know that that is the industry. We should be letting them know this is a deplorable industry that preys on the vulnerable. In addition to the thousands of psychological studies that we have to draw from that would teach a child, teach a parent to teach a child, teach a teacher to teach a child about the detrimental and damaging effects that porn has on any age, not just on young developing minds, but that's what we're talking about here. So most especially from their self-esteem right through to their ability to form healthy relationships and beyond, because of course there is a possibility of getting addicted to porn. And the one thing that we know that all sexual convicts have, those convicted of sex crimes have, is an addiction to porn, often an addiction to hardcore porn. And that's not to say that everyone who's addicted to porn will become a predator and offend. But what I'm saying is that those who all have that in common. All have that in common. And that data is available for anyone to read. So there's just a whole spectrum of stuff. It is unhealthy.
And people use the argument about, oh, the children can watch porn on their phones. Again, that's a whole different argument. Children should not be watching porn on their phones. That is not an argument to use.
How could we become so desensitized that we say, sure, they see it anyway? And we've seen politicians in this country use that as the justification that they need this education. They need this education because they're watching it anyway, so we need to educate them on it, which is a complete nonsense. A complete nonsense. They would need any of these books that outline all of these sex acts, some of which are just completely depraved, or indeed that they would need an education that would teach them the ins and outs of just, this level of thing. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Why should we become so desensitized? Why are we not looking at safeguarding children, safeguarding measures? Like, I've lived in countries where they have firewalls in place. We know that there are algorithms that can detect what age somebody who's surfing the net is approximately within an age bracket. We could easily have firewalls in place. As I say, we could easily have awareness campaigns in place to let children know just what the porn industry, as I said, the trafficked or the broken people, and the detrimental effects that it could have on their well-being. We could have these in place if we wanted to, but we don't. Instead, we're teaching kids and we're pushing them towards viewing it.
Yeah, and again, it's about how a teacher handles the topic. That door is closed, and the teacher can handle this topic in any way that he or she sees fit. And the children then, maybe there might be more mature children in the class who may bring things to the table that other children in the class are not ready to hear. I mean, it opens up a whole can of worms, and it is the parents' place to educate their children about this when they feel the time is appropriate, which is at a much later stage in their development. I just like, as you were speaking there, Natasha, I mean, also about the detransitioners. There's no mention in the curriculum about detransitioners, about those that are going through hell after they've transitioned, and that they wish to go back and they can't. And there's no mention of these horrific stories or videos of these children. It's all glorification. It's all celebration. So it's totally one-sided.
To go off on a sidebar as well, one of the links that we will be the World Health Organization Standards for Sexual Education in Europe, which is a framework that the Irish government have been looking at when they put together the curriculum, amongst other things. And it's worthwhile having a look at this because if you've rightfully mentioned, Linda, children move at all different paces. They are individuals. And this framework does age brackets from 0 to 4 right through to 18. And the 0 to 4 age, which, as I said, the link, you can read it for yourself, is inclusive of teaching children masturbation and self-pleasure. Now, there's not going to be many 0 to 4-year-olds who are going to be, cognitively at a stage of development that they need to learn about that, let alone be given any instruction. And I'd like to bring the attention to parents while we have them here. From this year, as we know, September 2023, it was rolled into the prepubescent and adolescent kids, the 5th, 6th class and the junior cycle. All right. Next year, in accordance to the gov.ie, it will be rolled out for all of secondary school from September 2024. And from the year after that, September 2025, it is due to be rolled out for all ages. Now, my wonder is, does that include the ECI program? If indeed they're to use the World Health Organization's standards for sexual education as a real tool here, will they be implementing something into the ECI program, which is for age 2 years and 8 months through to, it's a preschool program? Or will they just bring it in from junior infants and leave it at that, or 5-year-olds?
And just while you're mentioning that, the consultation is up at the moment for the senior cycle. And
we'll
we're
share that link
encouraging
too.
parents to send in their submission to the NCCA. We will be providing a template that parents can use, but you can adjust it and add to it. We would advise you to personalize it a bit, but we need as many consultations to go in as submissions to go in as possible. So that we will be providing that very shortly, and it'll be on the Irish Education Alliance website and the Parents' Rights Alliance website. So that consultation, I think the closing date is October 17th. So just to finish up there, maybe parents aren't aware of the Busybodies book that is in 5th and 6th class. So the consultation for primary school hasn't even happened, and they're already teaching gender identity to 5th and 6th class. They teach this in 6th class, but the book is provided to 5th and 6th class students, so they will be able to read about this. And we look at this page here, and it says at the top, we all have a gender identity. Gender identity is how we think of ourselves as a boy, girl, neither or both. I mean, you're talking about children who are just coming to grips with being a boy or a girl. It is utter indoctrination. A boy might be effeminate, a girl might be a tomboy, and they might wonder, were they born in the wrong body? And that planting of that idea in a child's mind could be utterly detrimental. You know, if they decide, the parents go along with it and they take puberty blockers, which is, you know, massive.
But you can see how this social contagion would come about, even if the child themselves doesn't come to that. Maybe their classmates might say, because I was always a tomboy, you know, as a child, and Jan, I know you were too. Maybe their classmates might point out, hey, you know, you're kind of one of the guys. Like, maybe are you one of these transgender? Are you trans? Are you, you know? And maybe the kid, you know, thinking, you know, oh, there's a bit of a tension here. Yeah, I am. And if they have one of these gung-ho they-them teachers, you know, that jumps on the bandwagon and brings the parents in and starts, you know, or that's almost the best
parents are put under. They'd be accused of being bad parents if they don't go along with this, which is why we're equipping parents with the tools.
And don't forget that Norma Foley stated, if I can cut in, that children who opt out of the SPHE and the transgender ideology program, if they feel there's a risk, Norma Foley stated they'll be referred to for a psychiatric or a psychological assessment. So
more
just imagine what could happen is that child gets a psychological assessment because mummy here has opted them out of this education. And then all of a sudden they call TUSLA, and then they say, she's not fit to be a mom. We're gonna intervene and take the children off her. And we can see what's happening with all of the negligence on TUSLA's part, particularly with the grooming gangs that we haven't even heard about recently in the news with all the other distractions. So, you know, that really was worrisome when she made that threat of your children, if you opt them out, may be referred for a psychiatric assessment.
So I'll end there on that. And again, I advise parents to do your own research and to look up the NCCA website and look up those resources. Again, they are difficult to find. If you cannot find
we'll share all the links.
Yeah, if you can, we will share all the links as well. But again, I think it's good to go into the website yourself and study it, and just spend some time finding those resources and looking at them thoroughly. You know, and that will empower parents. I really believe that to really want to fight against this and do the work to opt out and to speak to other parents and to speak to the principal. You know, you have the right to go to that school. The last few years, you know, we were stopped going to the school. Now we need to start going in there and knocking on the principal's door and speaking to him or her. And I would like to hand you over now to Natasha, who will run through the legal and statutory rights that you have as parents to assert this power that you have. Thank you very much.
Just to do a time check, we've got about 15 minutes until we hit the hour mark. Time flies when we're having fun. So hopefully you can get the legal bits out in 10 minutes and then or 10 or 15 and we wrap up.
I'll do my very best. Okay. And of all of us, we're all chalkers, but of all of us, I'm the queen of ramble, as we know. So I'll do my best. Reel me in,
Jen. Great rambler, Natasha.
We don't ramble. We're just passionate about getting this information out. We could talk all day about it.
So what we want to do is just empower parents through knowledge, basically, because as Jana pointed out earlier on, we have distributed with the funds of lots of people who we crowdfunded, lots of people donated over 200,000 flyers around the country in every county. So we've come to know, we're out flyering ourselves, and come to know from the people out flyering what's already happening out there, what the feedback is, that the vast majority of parents haven't got a clue that this has been put into the curriculum. And we know this, you know, and it's so funny. They'll send you out letters for literally everything, but nothing to make sure and ensure that parents were aware of this curriculum change and the extent of it. And we know that many parents have been horrified, but we also know that we have been occasionally attacked by some, verbally attacked by some principals who are absolutely for this, and occasionally attacked by some parents who have told us that there's 2 kids transitioning in my child's class, and there's this, and everyone's on board with the pronouns, and you know the whole school supports it, and we don't need this. And we would of course come back and say, well, we're just giving the information to ensure that all parents are aware, so they don't find out after the fact that this is what their child has been taught in school, taught as a fact no less as well. So another big thing that stood out, a huge thing, which is just for me, took me aback, to be honest, was the amount of parents that said something to the effect of, am I allowed to with reference to their own children? Am I allowed to opt my child out? Am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to do that, with reference to their own children? So I want to start by saying, and I know that in Ireland, it's like endemic. It's one of the great things about Irish people is that we're so hospitable, meaning we're so amenable, is what we don't like rocking the boat. We don't necessarily like confrontation. We want everyone to get on and have a good time. And it is endemic in our society, and has always been endemic in our society, to look to authority and to not question and obey authority. So when I say authority, I mean perceived authority, of course. I mean teachers, principals, doctors, politicians, you know, all of these kind of roles, which has gotten our society into trouble in the past, and we don't seem to learn from it. We don't know how to shake ourselves out of it. You know, various abuse that's happened in Ireland over the years was because people would teach their children to obey authority and to not question authority. And although that's changed somewhat now, we still have that in our societies big time. So I just want to start by stating to every single mother and father that might be watching this, that it is your innate right, God's law, natural law, your innate right, the moment you became a parent, that everything got to do with that child. Everything is your responsibility and yours alone. Nobody trumps your decisions, not your medical choices for the child. And I know, again, like I've said, right from pregnancy, we're made to almost feel like we have to go along with this or that or this when we're dealing with midwives and doctors and all sorts of things. But that's not the case. It is our natural rights as parents, as mothers and fathers, to decipher all things for our children without permission. It's not a right that was gifted to us. However, the Constitution in Ireland, which was derived from natural law, supports this. And we have words like inalienable and all this kind of thing. It supports that the parent is the be all and end all when it comes to all things for your child. And a child, by the way, is any individual under the age of 18. Now, I know that there are some politicians in this country that believe an adult starts at age 12. Perhaps it's wishful thinking on their side for reasons I'd rather not go into, rather not speculate on, but a child is anyone under the age of 18. So I just wanted to go through, we have put a step-by-step process in place to empower parents, tools that you can do to invoke your natural rights that are enshrined in our Constitution and that are indeed echoed in the acts and statutes in this country. Unequivocally, without a doubt, without caveat, which I'm going to go into now. And we do have a step-by-step process. I do want to tell you that perhaps the first step will work when you're trying to opt out your kids, and it should be just as simple as a one step. But we have put in place numerous steps because the feedback already is that in some cases parents are receiving pushback from the principals of the school, which I'll get into in a minute. But in other cases, there is no pushback. So please don't be disheartened. But I'm just giving you the feedback from the short period of time since school started back so that you know that it may be a multiple step process for you. But we are here as supporters to offer support. We have put together these tools, but we are not saying that our tools are the be all and end all. There could be multiple opt-out letters there that good people have taken the time to put together. Use anything, use any tools. It doesn't matter. The point is that you are invoking your right as a mother or a father. That's the main thing, because this fight is not just for me and my children. My fight affects yours, affects yours, affects yours, because this affects all the children. So, you know, we're not looking to be heroes, leaders, anything. We are just looking to empower you with knowledge and to support you if you need support, especially those who are having recurring pushback from the school, that we will be here to support you and guide you if you need it, you know. So we have, as I say, a multiple step process, which are opt-out letters that have been drafted by legal minds. They are templates. You can copy paste them and you can amend them as you see fit, you know. So there's various different things that we reference in these templates, and I'm just going to go through that as quickly as I can, I promise, as quickly as I can. So we reference section 30, subsection 2, subsection E, and this says that the minister shall not require any student to attend instruction in any subject which is contrary to the conscience of the parent of the student. And the same applies to any student who's already reached the age of 18. They can opt themselves out, or if it's contrary to their own conscience, they do not have to attend that instruction in that subject. So our conscience, of course, is a person's moral sense of right and wrong. Now, I feel, so you were talking about a conscientious objection here, your objection on the grounds of your conscience. Now, I do want to highlight and stress that it is not written that you need to justify your morality, your sense of right and wrong. You do not need to say, this is against, I object to this because this is against my sense of right and wrong because X, Y, and Z. I believe this. You are not in a debate with anyone. You are not looking to win over your argument. There is no argument, and there's no requirement there's no legal requirement on you whatsoever to put forward your case and to have a back and forward. It is enough for you to object on the ground of a conscientious objection to anything that would be thought in the school setting, and the school have a statutory obligation to adhere to your objection and to ensure that your child is not taught something that is that you have voiced you don't consent to. So that's the Education Act. We will share links to all of these things as well for you to have a read through for yourself. I'm trying to fly through it, so forgive me. We also reference section 9, subsection D. And I'll just read that for a second. The promotion to promote the moral, spiritual, social, and personal development of students and provide health education for them in consultation with their parents, having regard for the characteristic spirit of the school. So it is enshrined that whilst an obligation of the school would be to look after these things in consultation with the parent is echoed in multiple sections in this act. And it's just as a hilarious thing, I think, in regards to the characteristic spirit of the school. So with regards to Christian schools, I find that especially funny because surely they should uphold the word of God, and that's not happening. And indeed, we're not hearing any objections across the board for that. But let me go on to the Children's First Act 2015. Okay, so this act places a number of statutory obligations on the school. One of risk assessment to identify their services and to prepare a child safeguarding statement, which sets out the policies and procedures which are in place to mitigate the risks identified. Now, very interestingly, this says potential harm for a child, not for the children. It's not a collective potential harm. If there is harm that can even be seen in a risk assessment for one child, then that surely is enough to pause, take a step back, and to see, is this a risk of harm for all children here? So that's just, we reference the Child First Act, as I say, the statutory obligations of schools in that. We reference the Child First Act 2015, additionally, again, echoes the statutory obligations of the school in section 11, subsection 3. That again is the child safeguarding statement. which shall include a written assessment of the risks and in that regard specify the procedures that are in place, etc., etc. So we reference multiple sections echoing kind of the same thing. We also reference Bunreacht na hÉireann, the Irish Constitution, Article 42. And this again is just going into the school as educator must protect and vindicate the natural and imprescriptible rights of children. The updated curriculum features, a number of things, and it does not set out how a child's constitutional rights to education are being respected. There's no risk assessment as far as we can see conducted. There's been none published. To balance the risk to children from exposure to this content. And indeed, Article 42.1, I think, acknowledges the family as the primary natural educator of the child, and that's educator meaning all things, so religious, moral, intellectual, physical education, social education of their children. And of course, sending your child to school, then the school would adopt the safeguarding responsibilities of the parents, locus parentis, and must act in consultation and with the parent on all things when acting in locus parentis for the child there. So I will take you through the opt-out letters. I'm trying to fly through them, so somebody pause me if I'm not making any sense at any stage, because I'm trying not to ramble. So the opt-out 1 letter. Now, as we said, and as you may know after watching this, or as you may have known already, this year we're talking about 5th and 6th class and junior cycle. However, we recommend that mothers and fathers of children of all ages, from literally junior infants right through to leaving cert, use this opt-out letter. You can take it, you can amend it, you can adapt it, and submit it into your principal. Because as we have said, this is in all facets of school. It's not just this curriculum that's the issue. So I'm going to talk to you about what's in this opt-out letter and why it's important to do it. Like there's a school that has a flag raising ceremony for junior infants. A flag raising ceremony, which of course comes with instruction and detail behind what this trans flag represents.
And I'm assuming, Natasha, this isn't the Irish. This isn't the Irish flag you're talking about, I'm assuming.
No. This is your multicolored trans flag with, and all that encompasses. So, there's no way they're going to have a flag raising ceremony without telling them what it's about, right? And that's for infants. And as we already know that children in multiple schools, because we couldn't have been more on the ground to get this feedback, because even when we're not physically flyering ourselves, people got in touch with us to get us to send them a box of flyers, and they gave us feedback in every county. And we know that there are children being socially transitioned in every county of this country, and that's in all age groups, not just the ones that are affected by this curriculum. So, yes, so the opt-out letter will reference the Irish Education Act, as I say, and it'll state that you do not consent to your children being thought X, Y, and Z. So just to say, when you send your child to school, there is an assumed consent for them to be taught whatever they're going to be taught in school, right? And you're assuming that that's your basic maths and geography and English and all these kind of things that are, that you've no major worries on. But so this letter essentially will serve to say that you do not consent, and we actually go on to list out the categories of the things that you don't consent, and I'll read out them in a second. And it says on the ground of conscience. So again, as I said, it is your statutory right to object on the ground of conscience, and you do not have to justify that, give reasoning for that. It could be for religious reasons, it could be for, because you can see that this is just insane and that it poses risk. It doesn't matter. You don't have to go into it. The law does not require you to go into it. It is enough to say that, and then the school has a statutory obligation to uphold your wishes. So I'm just going to click on this now and just outline a number of things that are listed and why it makes sense for parents of children in all age categories, in all classes, to submit this into their principal. So in accordance to section what's it in the Education Act 1998, I do not consent to my child's participation in any sexual education curriculum instruction on the following, as it is contrary to my conscience. The first one, gender identity ideology. B, LGBTQIA plus minus LMNOP. C, transgenderism or gender identity, including but not limited to gender as a social construct, gender binary, gender spectrum, gender reassignment surgery, gender dysphoria, false gender, pronouns, gender expression, and or cross-sex hormones. D, pornography. E, any group, club, entity, or activity that discusses or addresses topics listed above in what we've just said. In addition, I do not consent to the following: any referral of my child to a counsellor, medical professional, social worker, agency, group, or organisation within or outside the school for the purposes of discussing any of the topics listed in A through E. Now, we've already highlighted Norma's veiled threat to invoke fear in parents and you know, self-censorship and to fall into line, that if parents opt out their children, that their children could be subject. No, sorry, she doesn't have the legal right. No school has the legal right to send, without your consent, any individual under the age of 18 without parental consent. In fact, in this country, thanks be to good God, no child can avail of any medical intervention, including psychological intervention or any of these kind of things, without the consent of their parent. So she cannot do that. The school cannot do that. But we have reiterated that and made sure that that was clear in the letter submitting that. So by submitting this to the school, you've outlined that you do not consent. You've outlined that it's on the grounds, that you've referenced the acts and statutes, and that it's on a conscientious objection. And this is enough. They have a statutory requirement, as I say, to ensure that what you're saying is followed. Now, in the event that your child's in junior cycle, and there actually is the set SPHE classes, etc., the school then is required to ensure that your child has got a classroom setting or a study space or something separate to where this is being taught during that period of time. They have a responsibility to do that. And as I said, because this outlines so many things, my hope is that if you were, say, have a kid in primary school and there is a teacher wanting to be going home about socially transitioning a child in their classroom, technically they can't do that with your child in the classroom. So that would most certainly lead to further discussions with the parents. And it just makes sure that parents are brought into all conversations with any changes that happens in the classroom. It's detrimental. So I would say absolutely everyone send in this. Now, there has been some pushback, so we do have an opt-out too that I'm going to discuss in a minute. The next thing is the Board of Management letter, and we would suggest that every mother and father with a child in 5th, 6th class and junior cycle submit the Board of Management letter at the same time that you're submitting your opt-out letter. The Board of Management letter references the Education Act 1998, Children's First Act 2015-2017, Bunrach na Héireann, the articles in Bunrach na Héireann. It reiterates your conscientious objection, it risk assessment and child safety statement, emphasizes the school's statutory obligation and constitutional obligations. Now, the schools, of course, should already know all these things, but you are giving them this in a letter. So there's no way for any teacher or student or principal or anyone to say, I didn't know this, I wasn't aware of this. And it urges the Board of Management and or the school to invoke Article 9, subsection D of the Education Act 1998 by notifying the Department of Education that the school rejects this curriculum content as it conflicts with the statutory duty, with their statutory duties to safeguard children, or to produce their own risk assessment and child safety statement and circulate it to all parents. So this Board of Management letter is putting to the Board of Management that this is what we are requesting as a parent. This is what we're requesting of them, that we want them to, if they're not willing to get in touch with the Department of Education and opt the entire school out, or the schools that sit under this Board of Management, that we are asking them to provide all parents with their risk assessment and safety statement in relation to this curriculum. Now, legally, they have 3 months to provide this as in accordance with their statutory obligation. So this is outlining that that's what we want for them in the event that they have not gone and opted out the whole school, which is their statutory obligation. Now, we saw in a video earlier on with Dr. Ellie, Dr. Ellie Barnes, or Barnes, wherever she pronounced it, that she was saying it's policy, it has to be done, right? And insofar as the minister has brought in this curriculum, yes, every school then has to have it in. But they don't have to have it in for a certain period of time. They can have it in for 1 second. And then the teachers and the principal and the board of management can look and conscientiously object and say, hang on a second, I have a statutory obligation to safeguard children, and I can see foreseeable risk here to children. I can see foreseeable harm here to children. Therefore, that's all they need to then get in touch immediately with the Department of Education and say, I'm sorry, we need to pause this. We need to opt our school out of this, at least until you, the Department of Education and Norma Foley's office, can provide us with your risk assessment and your child safety statement, so that we as a school, me as a principal, us as a board of management for a number of schools can read through it and see that it does in fact determine that there is no risk to any child. It doesn't have to be a group of children, any child, even one single child is at risk. They can opt out. They have the power to that, the statutory power of that, and the statutory obligation to that. So the BOM letter, the board of management letter, outlines that. So as I say, the opt-out letter and the board of management letter, please submit these if you have a child 5th, 6th class or junior cycle, and if you have a child of any age, the opt-out letter in and of itself. Don't be shy about doing it. You know, the principal has no authority over you, as I said, just to reiterate, in the Constitution or in the acts and statutes over this country. There is no Asher if the principal says. Even the minister cannot trump you, because as we said in the Education Act 1998, section 30, in the subsections, it says that if the parent conscientiously objects to this, that the minister cannot and absolutely cannot require that the student learn it anyway. They do not have the power. They have no legal power to do that, despite any way that this is spoken. Trying to fly through it. As I say, in some cases, there has been a little bit of pushback. Not all cases. Some schools and principals are delighted to get this. And in fact, it empowers some principals, because what use, because they are being cowardly here. But if they are equipped with a stack of opt-out letters from their parent, they will feel empowered to then go to the board of management, to then go to the Department of Education and say, I'm sorry, the parents don't want this. The parents are conscientiously objecting, and I, with my statutory obligation, also can see foreseeable risk. You know, so it's empowering them. And more to the fact, even if you do have a principal who's gung-ho on this, if they have a stack of opt-out letters, they're not going to have a removing the majority of kids out of class to indoctrinate a handful of kids. They are surely going to say, okay, we need to make this either an after-school program, or we need to make this something different. This clearly isn't working. They cannot ignore multiple parents, but they can't even ignore one parent, but it'll make it even harder for them. Some of the pushback the parents are experiencing.
I was having a chat with someone the other day, and I said, I wonder if this was an opt-in whereby it was only after school, and parents had to choose to send their kids after school, and they had to read the literature and get into the detail. How many mothers and fathers would actually say, yes, I want my children to be taught that? So I think a big reason that mothers and fathers are allowing their kids to go into this program is because they just blindly trust the school, and they don't have to look at the detail. They just say, it's grand. Whereas if they had to look and had to sign their name and say, I authorize it, there'd be a real pushback.
Yeah, very good point.
You know, they did test the compliance of parents with regards to the masking of the children, you know, to see many parents.
And the open windows in the winter.
Yeah. And you know, that was a good test, but it's now time. Parents are really waking up to this, and they're really fighting back. And you know, you've got to put your money where your mouth is. Get those opt-out letters in, the board of management letter in, like Natasha there is advising.
Yeah, and share them on all your parents groups as well. And I know no one wants to be othered and have that awkward moment at the school gate, or feel like their child's not going to get uninvited from birthday parties and all these kind of things. But all you have to do in your parents group is say, hi, just sharing this resource, not looking at all to open a debate here in this chat. However, if someone wanted to talk further, feel free to contact me directly. You know, and if anyone does try and jump in with any, you're transphobic or whatever, just say, sorry, as per the other message, I wasn't looking to open a debate here at all. I understand and appreciate that this is not the environment, or that this is not appropriate to have that debate here in this parents' WhatsApp group, or whatever it is, this sports group, email chain, or whatever it is. I was just sharing the resource as it was shared with me, and I find it very useful. If anyone wants to discuss this privately, you know, or outside of this chain, let's have at it, and you can push back there. Please share this, because people do not know. They do not know, and they do not have these tools. They don't know how to do it. As I say,
have a meeting
am I
with the
allowed is
principal.
what we hear over and over again.
Have a meeting with the principal. Don't just email the principal. Have a meeting with the principal and hand the letter to the principal. Email and hand it in. And discuss it with the principal, because just sending an email sometimes isn't enough, because they can be ignored. You know.
Well, in this case,
and also maybe
legally they can't be ignored, Linda. But yeah, I know what
but
you're
I was going to say
saying.
about the registered letter, like maybe print off the opt-out letter. But there's so many ways of doing it, of reversing the headache, like we like to say. You know, send the opt-out letter by registered post, and if you send it by registered post, they legally have to reply to you.
I just want to point out though that it's not a for this to be any more or any less legal, it's not a requirement that it is in registered.
I know,
post.
but
it is enough to email. It is enough to. So I'm going to fly on with
I know, but they're doing it in different, like in a few different ways, can strengthen it. It can strengthen it. Email is enough. It is good to email, but handing it into the principal, having a discussion with the principal, you know, sending the letter by registered post, it just has an added impact. You know.
I know one of the mothers in the Natural Women's Council shared with us that she went in. She has three children, and she went into her principal and had what she thought was going to be quite a brief discussion about this. There was such a good dialogue. She was in for an hour and a half, reviewing all of the risks, all of the concerns, sharing data on this, talking about, you know, how it's detrimental to kids' health. And that's really important to have, like Linda said, that chat. I've chatted with my school's principal. I've chatted with my children's teachers. The power of that one conversation should never be underestimated. Have that conversation.
And again, the last few years we were pushed away from the school. Do you know? Like that was, you know, the last few years we weren't able to go into the school. We got used to that. We need now to feel ownership of that school again. We own that school. We own that principal and the teachers. They are there to serve us, just like the guards are there to serve us. So we need to hold that power within us.
And as you're saying, Janice, so many principals are more than happy to actually have this dialogue, and it empowers them too. It's not all pushback, you know, that we're getting, but there is some of it. So I'm going to fly on with the other opt-out letters. So opt-out two is in the event that you have experienced this pushback. So some of the pushback that parents have gotten back to us and said is that the principal, if you can believe this, says, yeah, no, they just sit at the end of the classroom. If you opt out, that's us opting, like, you know, fulfilling the statutory obligation. The child just sits at the end of the classroom while this is being thought, as if they can somehow switch off their ears and not take it in. That is not at all sufficient, needless to say, and that is not good enough. That is not them fulfilling their statutory obligation. Absolutely not. And in other cases, there are principals who, of course, want this thought. They're usually these people are in favor of this curriculum, and they're telling parents, well, yeah, you can do that, but you have to come and collect your child and drop them back to school. And that is absolutely not at all what is outlined in the Acts and Statutes here at all. That you should have to remove your child and bring your child back. You know, it's absolutely just. They're making hurdles on purpose. It's very, very purposely done. So the opt-out letter 2, which you can also get on the Irish Education Lines, which we will share links under this video as well, it reiterates that you're invoking your statutory rights under the Education Act. To withdraw your consent to X, Y, and Z, the list of things, as it's contrary to your conscience. It's placing the school on formal notice as the school is in contravention of the Education Act 1998 and Articles 42.1 and 42.2 of the Constitution, as they have failed to adhere to the instruction of the parent by failing to facilitate alternative instruction / supervision during the period of time when this class or this curriculum is being taught. So they are being put on formal notice there. Yeah, so let me just fly on then. So that's the opt-out 2. Now, there will be certain schools, there will be certain cases where there is further pushback again. Now, I don't mean to scare anyone or anything. We're getting so much feedback that opt-out 1 letter is more than enough and they're being accommodated and the statutory obligations are being fulfilled. But we do have a step 4 and a step 5 and a step 6. And these are slightly more bespoke, because at this stage, we will have templates up on the website, which we're putting up in the coming days on the Irish Education Alliance website. However, feel free to get in touch with us then, because we know that the back and forth that you may have had by this time might be unique, might have certain specifications that you might read the template and think, okay, how do I insert this or insert that, or whatever the case might be, because the principal said this specific thing to me that I hadn't, that kind of was a curveball to me. And we are more than happy, as I say, we you know, we have lawyers on hand and all this kind of thing. We're more than happy to speak with you and to edit the template specific to you for the next steps that you can do. So you're not alone. And as I say, again, we are just looking to empower people. We are not calling ourselves leaders or saying, come follow us, we know the way. That's not the case at all. We've just put our heads together and come up with this as being the best route that we know how right now. But there could be multiple ways. There's multiple ways to do this, you know, and this is what we have right now. So we are here for you to give support and to give guidance, as I say, legal advice pro bono, and support as mothers and things like that to anybody who is struggling or is getting pushback and feels like they're out on a boat in the middle of the ocean by themselves. You are absolutely not. So the step 4 will be to forward the complaint to the Board of Management. And we're going to specify a timeline that this has to be addressed and that this has to be, you know, and at this stage, we're really, it's a more hard worded thing that we're going to have. We're going to get them to provide their child safety statement. We're going to reiterate that we want that provided. And as I say, we will help with the cover letter for this. So yeah, they're reiterating their duty of care to the perceived danger that they could have, potential risk of the continued exposure from the gender ideology, and that indeed they're exposing themselves to potential future litigation. And we will reference at that point in more detail the various countries where litigation is underway against schools, like individual schools, board of management, education departments, ministers. This is already going on because there is a number of countries around the world who are already a few steps ahead of us, who have already had this put into the curriculum a few years ahead of us. And we're already seeing the impacts of this, you know. And there's already people winning cases as well. Even in California, I think I referenced this, there was a woman who took the school and the school board to court and won, I think, 100,000 in damages or something like that, because the school had socially transitioned their child without informing them. And this is in California. If you know anything about California, they're you know, it's perceived anyway that it's a super sort of leftist sort of place. But you know, in the UK, there is a class action underway. The Bad Law Project are the ones that are taking it on behalf of a number of parents against the Department of Education for exposing their children for gender ideology and for the unsuitable reading material as well. That's also in this class action. And they're saying they're negligible for foreseeable harm, obvious foreseeable harm, and that they put their child basically in harm's way, and that harm did come to these children. So in this case, these parents, this is after the fact. These parents were not informed. They didn't understand that this was in the curriculum. Children may have been, so in some cases in this class act, children may have been socially transitioned unbeknownst to the parents, or they may have been sort of put on a hamster wheel as such because of this ideology. And the kids have been damaged from irreversible damage. We're talking from medications, from surgeries in some cases, and in other cases just psychologically damaged from even socially transitioning. So it is a class action that's underway at the moment. So the next step, we will really put in all that thing that the schools, the Board of Management and everything are exposing themselves to potential future litigation. And we are requiring from them, you know, 7 days period to get back to us and say, why are they failing in their statutory obligation after this thread of correspondence. We do have a step 5. We will launch a complaint then with Foley and the Department of Education, directly with them, submitting all of correspondence to date. And we would CC in, and we'd advise people as we go to CC in all TDs, especially the rural TDs who have already spoken out against this curriculum. It's important to notify them, and they're already speaking out in their Oireachtas, etc. So it's important to notify them, to try and get them to speak out on your behalf again, to say, wow, this parent is having all this correspondence. They're invoking their rights and they're being pushed back. and nobody has the right to do that. So this is unlawful, you know, and to really bring that out. But we would demand at this point in this letter that they raise an urgent motion so that this can be put on public record and discussed in the Oireachtas. And that would be a letter directly to the Department of Education, Norma Foley's office. So urgent intervention. And as I say, the step-by-step, the correspondence, any pushback whatsoever would be unlawful. So we probably will not have to get to this stage, but in some schools, I can foresee now, which is why we even have a step 6, which is the Children's Ombudsman, and also considering an injunction in the High Court. And we are 10 steps ahead here. We are already, you know, the lawyers are already looking at stuff. We're already helping with templates. We're already doing things and putting various different things in process, so that we'll be 10 steps ahead for foreseeable pushback. That certainly we can almost cherry pick and guess which schools that this is going to happen to, because we've seen a trend from flyering around the countries. But I have to say, there's even been some cases where it is a highly unlikely school, like Christian schools, where we have the principal, you know, really berate us for flyering, giving parents information on this curriculum. And this is in a Christian school, so you'd almost expect perhaps that it's certain schools that are maybe a little bit more notorious for pushing certain ideologies. But this is happening in, you know, there's a sprinkling of schools around the country that this is happening in to such an extent that there are multiple children being socially transitioned within Christian schools even. So there's no safe haven of schools. This is rolled out in every single school, and it's varying degrees that the principals in these schools are on board or cowardice in this regard for child safeguarding. So
plus, Natasha, like they're putting in gender neutral toilets in schools without consultation with parents. You know,
without consultation of parents. Yeah,
parents,
that is
so you
happening.
got children in like 5th and 6th class, girls who are, you know, in puberty, and who will be sharing toilets with boys at a very vulnerable, delicate time. You know, and it's already just it's more indoctrination. You know. Removing the boys and girls, you know, from the doors and the toilets.
It's also indeed, it's teaching kids, as I said earlier on, I used the word gaslighting, but it's teaching kids if a child feels uncomfortable with that, as you said, if, you know, when you start menstruating, it's a, you know, it's an awkward, uncomfortable period of time for any young woman, which we know about, any young girl to have to go through. But the idea of having to share a bathroom and all these other things, they would feel, I would imagine, like they have to go against their own conscience and their own feelings of this is wrong, you know. And Johnny, you had made a point before about how we should champion our children and teach them that if something feels wrong, you have a right, and mom and dad will support you, to say to your teacher or whomsoever is trying to teach you something that you feel in your gut is wrong, is against your own conscience. No, I'm sorry, I don't agree with this. No, I do not want this. No, I don't consent in this. And I'm fairly sure my parents don't consent to me being told this either. Yeah, there is no such thing. And we've had horrifying videos where kids have recorded in the UK principals, teachers going at these students. Oh, well, you're homophobic and you're this and you're that. When you're here, you can keep those horrible, hateful thoughts for at home. You won't have them in this classroom. This is what we learn in this class, and this is what's fact here. But there's only one truth. There's no such thing as my truth and your truth. There is the truth. That's it. And we should champion and give our children a pat on the back when we see that they're exercising their critical thought, when we see that they are thinking outside the box and questioning authority, even our authority, which sometimes can be a little bit tricky, especially if you have preschoolers, because they're going to question everything. But, you know, to find the balance right and to really say, you know what, that's a good question. Let me even if you don't have time right then, mommy's go, I'll talk to you about that later. That's a great question. But right now, you know, this is what you have to put on their shoes. But, you know, to really champion that and to really give your kids a pat on the back and to let them know when they're going into school, if there's anything, mom and dad will support you if you say no. If you say you don't consent, you don't want this, I don't like hearing this, I don't want to hear this, and actually I don't even think that this is true. Whatever it is, mom and dad have your back, and make sure that they know that.
Yeah, 100%. That's probably a good as we wrap up. That's probably a really good part to end on. Is when I was at the GenSpec conference, that same point came up. I asked as a mom, how do I prevent my children, if they're still in the public school system, from going down a path where they could feel uncomfortable in their body or be part of this social contagion. And one mom had a really good point, an expert in the audience said, the fact that you're already awake and aware to what's happening, you're already one step ahead having those conversations with your children. But the other point was teach your children to be critical thinkers. And, you know, I think my 5-year-old son gets a gold medal in that category. Is something doesn't make sense and they question and challenge it, commend them. That's great. You're questioning that, you know, pushing back on that. You know, if someone tells your child there's a pig flying across the sky or a boy can become a girl, that's ridiculous. Yes, you're right. That is. So commend and give your kids a big high five for questioning.
Yeah, and don't tell them don't be cheeky. You know, if you're cheeky, like none. You know, just I know it's hard. You know, especially if they are being cheeky, especially if you know they're just being trying to push buttons. You know, but you know it's so super important because especially in the history of Ireland, we have had child abuse, we have all sorts of things, and I believe it's because it's been endemic in our societies to not only blindly trust authority, but also to feel as if we cannot speak out because they are here and we're down here. And that is not the case. You as an individual human are born with rights. Nobody gives them to you over your whole body, you know? And the moment you become a mother or a father, your rights are bestowed upon you, all the human rights for that child until such a time that they're an adult and that they have the cognitive function to make best practice decisions for themselves. That is your innate human rights, and it is championed in our acts and statutes and echoed in our constitution. And don't let anyone else make you feel that it's not.
Which is why our campaign is called Protect Childhood.
Protect childhood. And, you know, a phrase that a dear friend said to me over the last few days is, you know, we were talking about the curriculum and what's happening in schools and the library books. And they had a really good phrase, and this is one I'm going to start using, is this is state-sponsored child abuse. State-sponsored child abuse. They're using our public funds in the school system to indoctrinate, sexualize, and confuse children, to lead children, innocent children, down the path of, you know, questioning their body, questioning whether they're a boy or a girl, and leading them down to possibly thinking that they're non-binary or transgender. So that's a phrase we should all feel comfortable using. This is state-sponsored child abuse. And I would ask any principal who's watching this, any teacher, is that there's been no risk assessment and no safeguarding for children done on this. So if my child is in school and they are out in the yard, or maybe their friends are talking about the fact that a girl can become a boy, and maybe someone's child who is one of those vulnerable ones, they're on the spectrum or feeling alone, or they're suffering from, you know, anxiety or depression and such, they decide they want to go home and tell mommy and daddy they want to be a boy and they want puberty blockers. And if they don't, you know, they make certain threats that the parents feel like their head is over, you know, over a block on it. And that kid takes puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, which are not irreversible, and then they get potential surgeries. They wake up, like so many of these people who have tried to change their sex, they wake up in a few years and say, I made the biggest mistake of my life, actually trying to, you know, get cosmetic surgery or castrate and sterilize myself didn't actually make my problems go away. Who can that parent go after? Where did that child hear about it? School. So as a teacher and as a principal, if this child is harmed and decides they want to socially or medically, surgically transition, and it was something they learned in school, you are the ones that the parents will go after. And all it takes is that first court case. This will all collapse. We saw the story of Kira Bell in the UK. Tavistock was shut down. The gender affirming clinic was shut down due to some brave whistleblowers, etc. Is don't be that teacher and principal that's going to confuse children, because the responsibility is going to lie with you for that confusion.
And you know, I have no doubt that this will end. This will crumble, and we will be free from this, and our children will be free from this. I have no doubt. It's like because it like sense will win over nonsense.
They're banking on our silence and on our are,
Just
either apathy or are just, a fear of bringing it forward and everything. And don't get me wrong, we're not simplifying it. I'm not saying, I know for some people talking to the principal about any issue or the teacher about any issue is something that causes anxiety for you. But this is your child. This is your responsibility.
I
You need
myself
to act.
find it difficult. I'm like encouraging parents to do it. I myself find it difficult to approach the principal in the school where my teenagers go to. Do you know? It is not easy.
I'm just conscious of time, ladies. We're at an hour and a half. I know we tried to keep it an hour. We could talk all day on this, but I think what we should do is conclude and then just remind all the mothers and fathers of the great letters that thanks to the Lawyers for Justice Ireland. If you follow Lawyers for Justice Ireland on Telegram, Twitter, and Facebook, the resources are absolutely amazing. The group of those 4 people work round the clock nonstop on a pro bono basis. So use those letters. Opt out 1 in Board of Management. Any problems, opt out 2, and then all the other steps will follow.
We also have the other website, Parents' Rights Alliance, as well. All the opt out letters are there too. Yeah.
parentsrightsalliance.com, irisheducationalliance.com. And the wonderful news is I've only had 3 or 4 mothers contact me to say that their schools have pushed back. So thousands have sent the opt-out letter, thousands. And there's only been very few, 3 or 4, who have had any problems with the school, and they've reached out and are dealing with it. So the great news is most schools and principals and teachers do not want to teach this. And if you send that opt-out and Board of Management letter, absolutely your rights will be upheld as mothers and fathers. So that's great. I hope everyone has a great night. And any questions, we'll do another podcast on any specific topics that we have. So thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Have a great night.